This week on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast, I'm answering the question, how much car can you afford in retirement? Today, I'm talking about calculating affordability if you're going to lease or finance a car. Now, yesterday I talked about figuring out affordability if you're planning to pay cash for a car. But if you decide to go the financing or lease route, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. There's a few rules of thumb, conventional personal advice that can help here. One of the conventional pieces of retirement planning or personal finance wisdom would be that you want to put at least 20% down when financing a car. Now, in my opinion, I'd say that's the bare minimum. If you have some trade-in value on a car and hopefully you've been saving for a purchase, because financing a car or leasing a car doesn't just mean you get to walk in and not save at all. Like I still want clients to set aside money, make sure that they have a lot of money to put down, even if they're going to finance a car. And I would actually aim for the opposite. Can you do 80% down and only finance a little bit? So again, this goes back to the question of affordability and can you afford to pay cash? If so, maybe you can't afford to pay cash for the whole thing, but if you can afford to pay 30, 40, 50%, 60, 80% cash and finance the rest, I think that is doable for a lot of people if they set aside some money and plan for the car purchase in advance. Most clients I talk to, and using my own life as an example, you kind of have a sense. You do have some surprises, like your car completely breaks or you end up buying a lemon or, it's just catastrophic, but that's rare. Most of the time you can kind of anticipate based on how old your car is, how much miles, if it's starting to have some reliability issues or not, how much longer you're going to be able to drive that. And you can usually tell at least a couple years out, like, yeah, I think in maybe 2 or 3 years, I'm probably going to need to buy a new car. Okay. So even if you're going to finance some of that, you need to start setting aside money now for that purchase. Okay, that's a tough love. Set aside money no matter what, but aim for as much down as you possibly can. 20%, not going to cut it, I would say, in most cases. Okay, depending on where you look, most personal finance websites, forums, blogs, etc., they're going to tell you that the total monthly outflow for a car or a lease payment shouldn't exceed 20% of your take-home pay. But you also have gas, maintenance, insurance, repairs. So you want to make sure that the total outflow related to all car expenses, not just the payments, is less than 20% of your total expenses. This, I think, holds true for retirees too. I would shoot for 10 to 15% of your total expense, not to exceed that. Less is more here. You're not going to be driving as much. Some of the variable costs with owning a car go down to like the maintenance and the gas and things like that. So most cases, you could also get by with a smaller car as well. So, and that's another issue with affordability when it comes to financing or leasing. How do you use your car? Most retirees, I need a big SUV. I have a giant SUV that seats all 4 of my kids. Plus, I can throw in another in the back seat if I have to. And it has the cargo space for groceries. I throw their bikes back there. I have to carry strollers. I need a massive car because of the utility that it provides in the stage of life that I'm in. But most retirees, they don't need a huge SUV. They don't need a big truck. I mean, maybe you do if you're hauling things all the time, but a lot of retirees can get by pretty well with a smaller car, and those actually tend to cost less, and that makes sense for a lot of people as well. So if you plan to drive the car less, put less miles on it, and you really, really, really like owning a newer car, then leasing might make sense over financing, especially if reliability is like the most important factor. But all else being equal, you're going to usually pay less to lease versus finance. Most leases will have a pretty good warranty, so that also keeps some of your ongoing maintenance costs lower and more predictable. So again, there are trade-offs. I think the bottom line with cars and with leasing versus financing is that you want to try to keep your investment portfolio intact and growing and maintaining financial security. That matters way more than having a really nice newer car. So if the car you want isn't the car you can actually afford, I got to give you some tough love and tell you just suck it up, buy the car that you can afford, because it's better to buy something reliable and modest than pay for a really expensive lease or interest even on your car loan. And when you own something that's depreciating in value. So in the long run, you'll almost certainly pay a lot more if you decide to lease or finance your cars versus paying cash. That's probably the most important takeaway from this whole week on affordability. Remember that we're thinking long term here. And so we want to save money while still driving a nice, reliable car that we enjoy driving. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.